welcome to the first Working Minds event here in Gibraltar. And looking around, I'm super thrilled and excited at how many people are here today. So thank you very much all for coming. It's promising to be an insightful panel discussion, I think. But before we start, I want to welcome GIBSAMS and Cycle, which are our main beneficiary charities this evening. And in a way, both those charities are beautifully bookcasing the spectrum of mental health and well-being, with GIBSAMS supporting people when things get really tough, and also in preventing suicides. And Cycle work with young people to increase resilience, develop personal, business and life skills, which is more on the preventative side of things. So, what happens? Okay, so if I can just ask Romina and Mary-Lou to just stand up for a moment for the people that don't know who they are, because you may, well, you probably all know Mary-Lou, but you may not know Romina. It's a very young charity, Cycle, and you may have questions for them, or maybe interested in ways of supporting them through your business and the wonderful work they do. So there'll be an opportunity after the panel discussion, so please make use of that, speak to them and see the wonderful stuff that they're up to. So thank you, both of you, for being here tonight.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Now, I don't usually spend my time moderating events, so bear with me this evening. I mean, you can tell that even the microphone is not playing ball. My day job is in supporting companies with regards to well-being and performance. And this has shown me that it doesn't really matter whether you are a CEO of a large company, or a manager, or a teacher, or a plumber, or a lawyer, or a parent, or whatever else you do in your life. But stress, pressure, and anxiety can affect all of us at some point, and it can have an impact on how well we do. So even though that may seem bleak, the good news is that our capacity for well-being doesn't depend on who we are or what we do. We all have the ability to thrive, to experience contentment, and to continuously grow in our work and in our personal lives. So, in my view, performance, optimization, effectiveness kind of goes hand in hand with fulfillment, enjoyment, and thriving. But my position on employee well-being perhaps is slightly biased, which is why it's great to have our lovely panel here tonight, and they bring a varied background, and we're fortunate to know that they are willing to share their experience and insights. So I'm looking forward to welcome you all. First of all, Marcus Killick. He is CEO of Isolas and on the board of directors at a number of companies. And he's really going to be able to share with us his experience of the importance of well-being from a senior and board level perspective. We also have the lovely and wonderful Angelique Linares. She's managing partner at EY Gibraltar. And some of you may know that EY is a real champion for well-being at work globally. And this is no different here in Gibraltar. So Angelique will share her experience on that, so thank you for being here. Hannah Pilcher, it's lovely to have you here with us. Hannah is Director of Operations for the Gibraltar Financial Services Commission, and she's been instrumental in implementing and continuing to improve their wellbeing program. And it'll be particularly interesting to delve into the insights of the challenges that a larger organization presents. So it's great to have you. Saskia, we've got the great Saskia Donald. She is VP of HR at Addison Global, the creators of MoPlay. And Saskia really brings a wealth of experience from the world of startups and will be able to share her insights on the role well-being plays in those very challenging circumstances and environments a startup is. And last but definitely not least, we have Justin Phillips, barrister at law and partner at Phillips LLP. And they have a long-standing tradition of supporting their people's well-being. And what Justin will be able to bring to the discussion, as well as other things, is the challenges from a small to medium-sized business perspective. So thank you all for being here, and it's great to have you. I'd like to jump straight into it now, and my first question, and perhaps the audience question, would be, why support people's well-being at work?
Is it on? Oh gosh, yes. I think it's a very straightforward answer to a very straightforward question. If you don't look after the people, your people are your greatest resource. I don't care what you're doing as a business. If you haven't got happy people at work, if you haven't got well looked after people at work, if you aren't able to cater for the needs of differing people at work, then you're not going to be able to get the best out of them. It's not called human resources for nothing. I don't actually like that phrase. But you can create something amazing if you have a team that is engaged and empowered and happy at the end of the day. You can't solve people's problems. We're not here to be people's mothers, office mothers, obviously. But with a contented team, you will grow as a business and you will perform better as a business. It's bottom line ROI at the end of the day. That's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it is because people should be nice to people. But fundamentally, as a business, that's why you should do it. You'll perform better, full stop. Full stop.
Yeah, so offering a perspective from the GFSC, well-being's always been really important to the organisation. We've really built on from the legacy that Mark has started, and so it's been important for a really long time. For us, well-being is important for many reasons. One of them is that we're a public interest body, so you've got to be very careful with our budget and our finances. We regulate some very smart people, so we need very smart people working for us. Because we're a public interest body, we don't necessarily have the facilities and the resources to offer those employees the packages that you might get out in the private world. So we need to be creative about what we can offer our employees as a package. And a lot of those things will have some monetary value. So we do things like our health and our travel and our death in service, which people don't always think of as being part of your well-being strategies, but they are, because we're all busy. Anybody who is at work is also balancing things outside of the office as well. And it's the peace of mind little things bring you in knowing that if one of your children get ill, you can just pick up the phone and use your private health insurance to get a quick appointment, or you're booking a well-deserved holiday and your travel is covered and because you don't have the time to do that yourself. These are all little things that help reduce your daily stress and make you focus better when you're at work. So we just try to be as creative as possible, and that means relying on the HR resources that you do have, because they're the centres of excellence. You need to invest time in those people because they're professionals and they go out and do the research for you. And there are people that come back and speak to management and tell you, look, this is what you need to be doing. And I also think of my HR team as the pulse of the organisation. So I make sure I go to them and say what's really going on, because this is what I hear is happening, but how is it actually landing? So they've been instrumental. So I feel a bit bad that I'm here taking their credit, because it's all thanks to that team. So yeah, creativity, key.
What I hear you both saying there is that there are benefits, for the individual, for the company, and I guess the benefits for the individual then also ripple out into the community. So it's actually a wider perspective rather than just, what does this one person need right now? And you've also started to touch on, things that the GFSC is doing to support their people and well-being. And perhaps it would be nice if perhaps each of you could share one thing that you feel has made a positive impact on people's well-being in your company. Perhaps choose the one that was the most successful or the most impactful. That would be great. Thank you.
Shall I let someone else go? Shall I go first? So my example of the thing that I think succeeded best at work, but it was also going to be my example of one of the things that wasn't working at first, and I would have been minded to drop it if it hadn't been a U-turn, was our employee assistance program. So it's something that I helped introduce maybe 5 years ago. Liberty Counselling approached me and said, this is something that we offer. I thought it sounded great. It's something extra we could tick as something that we're giving to staff. And for maybe a year, we didn't have much uptake. People weren't really using it. And it wasn't until I had the two people that are now in the HR team, as I moved on to do some other things, that it really took off. And the reason I think it wasn't working at the beginning was because there's a lot of stigma around mental health. So people were a bit nervous about going and seeking counselling that work was paying for, which I have to say is really cost effective. I still can't believe how little we actually pay for this service, because it's also offered to your family members as well as the employees. So there were stigmas about mental health. There was a bit of insecurity around, well, if I've got work issues that I need to talk to a counsellor about, and my boss is going to get to hear about it. And I don't think I was doing a good enough job of embedding it. And it wasn't until my team started working on it and they got some feedback that as HR practitioners, and they're also trained as mental health first aiders, they shoulder a lot of people's stress, because they're the people that you go and speak to in the office when you're having a problem, and it doesn't have to be a work-related problem, it can be a personal problem, and they shoulder all that and they try and help you through it. And the counsellors actually said to my team, you need support yourself if you're going to be able to keep delivering and not burn out from everything you're doing for the organisation. And my team were brilliant at being very open about going to see counsellors and helping very slowly to erode at the stigma. I'm on the senior management team. I've been very open about going to see them myself, and that has a snowball effect. Once you start it from the top and you normalise it, and people start to feel like it's something they can do, and the bosses aren't going to worry like, oh, has this person got mental health issues? This is a problem. We also spotted the influencers in our organisation. You all know who they are, the people that really know what's going on around the coffee machine. And they started to go, and it just picked up momentum. And in the last couple of years, doubled the uptake. They built confidence around the fact that we actually don't get to hear about anything that you've discussed at all. All we get are the figures about who's going. So we've really seen a huge difference in that. And it has benefits for your organisation. One, that it's a happier place, which is obviously nice because you want people to get up and want to come to work. But if you've got a service that you can chip into, and it can take half an hour sometimes or an hour, and that's going to mean that after that you're ready to get back to your desk and be productive, rather than think, I'm going to have to take the week off, I'm going to have to sign myself off, I'm going to sit here confused, distracted and not produce, then it really shows in the bottom line as well. So that's definitely been the thing that I'm most proud of.
Thank you.
I don't mind taking that. For us, it's been a journey. It started with something small, and for us, wellness isn't just mental health. There's a lot of strands to it for us. So we might have started with a campaign to increase the amount of water people were drinking, making people, bringing fresh fruit to the office. That was just some of the things we started with. But on the other hand, we also have a very diverse team that works for us. And part of what we tried to achieve is create an environment where everybody felt comfortable, everybody felt included. So wellness isn't just the mental health for us, it's also part of the sort of the preventative side. And so as we've seen the benefits, we've seen the program grow. And very much for us, it's informal, it's a culture, it's something we all very strongly believe in and we all buy into. And so it's been growing. But I think one example of something that opened our eyes to the importance of this, and I mean, taking a step back, for us it's very important to communicate and making sure we're talking to staff, because it's very easy to forget, you know, somebody sitting in a corner. And so as part of the culture, we have what we call the better conversation that we have, and it's done quarterly. So once a quarter, somebody has an assigned counsellor and they meet, and it's all internal, but it gives a chance for people to vent, to talk, to be able to discuss issues. But the one thing that opened my eyes to if we're talking about mental health issues is we have some mindfulness sessions once a month, and we started it as you know, just to see how they took off. And sometimes we have a lot of people attending, sometimes we don't. So it's during office hours, and people turn up, and I don't often turn up to them, but one time I did turn up, and we were all sitting there, and the first part of it was sort of relaxation. And we were all sort of breathing exercises, relaxing, and you know, some people buy into it more or less, but when we finished and we started talking about it, I noticed one person was saying, actually, you know, I can't do that. Every time I try to relax, I get a pain. And I'm thinking, you know, this is something quite simple that everybody said, well, could see the benefit of. And suddenly it hit me, you know, actually, do I actually know what's happening with that person? You know, why is that person in that situation? What is the underlying issue that doesn't allow that person to relax in a sort of something quite, you know, in a small, you know, office environment? We were all trying to do some relaxation, and that opened my eyes to the fact that actually you're not in everybody's mind, and you don't know what's happening all the time. So how can we facilitate somehow in our office environment the ability for those people to be able to communicate when they have issues? Because right now, even though we have this formal process, I can't be everywhere all the time, or we can't be as partners everywhere. So that's when we've decided to actually have a more formal program in place, and similar to the way it was described before, we've decided to start at the top. So we are having counseling sessions, or you know, with a wellness coach. I won't say who, and. And as partners, we're buying into it, because we really want people to understand that it's okay to have these conversations. It's okay to talk up if things are not okay. It's okay to say, you know, things are not working for you. So that's an example of something that we are trying to introduce in our office.
I agree with everything that's been said. My problem is, bearing in mind what has been said is so obvious and so correct, why are we so bad at it? Because the fact is that whether it's a bowl of fruit or senior management engagement, as firms, and I will include all the firms I've worked for in respect of this, we could do so much better. We're so keen on bottom line that we fail to realise what delivers that bottom line, which is the very people who form part of the organisation. Where we do things, we do them inconsistently and patchily. You know, bowls of fruit come and go. You offer things like discounts to the gym. Never seen the point of that myself. Apparently to lose weight, you've got to go as well. But all these things are done higgledy-piggledy. There's no consistency in it. There's no delivery, ultimate long-term delivery in it. And I think of an example where I had the privilege of working with Hannah when I was at the Commission, And we looked in the very early days at how we delivered an anti-bullying policy. And the way we did that was turned it on its head and said, this is not about anti-bullying, this is about respect. And so it became a policy of respect for your colleagues, for the people you do business with, the people you do business for. And I feel that by creating the positive outlook and the positive gains that occur by treating your people right on a consistent basis, that you build it into everything you do. You build it into your appraisals, you build it into your maternity policies, you build it into your paternity policies. You do it in the way in which people at various points in their life may have to care for elderly parents. That you do it in a holistic way. And unless you do that, you are not going to truly deliver what you want for yourself and for your teams, which is a working environment that makes you proud every day you go into work because it truly cares about its people. It is not paying lip service to it. So in answer to your question, is there anything I'm truly proud of in the work I've been doing and the initiatives that we've instilled in comparison to what should be achieved, what I should achieve and what others should have achieved? No, there is improvements, there are improvements, but there is so much more that we need to do. And wouldn't it be nice if we as a jurisdiction, perhaps with help of government, with the other parts of the private sector, become as good as caring for our people who work in all manners of employment in the jurisdiction, as we are at gaming, as we are at DLT, and that we are able to go to the world and say, Gibraltar is not only a leader in the gaming industry and in blockchain, but is a leader in the way in which it treats all its people, both physically and mentally. And wouldn't that be something that we could sell proudly around the world and get more people and more organisations to come here?
I'm on board.
So I'm coming at this from quite a different perspective to everyone else. Everyone else is working in much larger organizations where you have people who are trained in human resources. You have departments who specialize in dealing with the kinds of issues that a large organization is going to be dealing with when it comes to well-being and ensuring that people that are working for them are producing and are not, maybe going off sick, suffering from stress, anxiety. And it's a lot more of a regimented regime. It's very well oiled, and it's something that's been developed over a long time and been given a lot of resources. Where I'm coming from, Philips is a relatively small business by comparison. We've got about 9 members of support staff, about 9 lawyers, and for example, a lot of roles double up. So, for example, I'm a partner there, but I also double up as head of human resources together with our office manager. So that what you don't have is a structured organization in the way that these guys do have. The other thing that you notice when you're working in a small environment like that is you get to know your colleagues very well. You're working in close proximity with them, and you might know their lives quite well. And know that they're suffering with difficulties or have their own personal problems to deal with. And I think in that context, it's perhaps sometimes quite easy to overlook what people are going through and just to take it for granted that that's something that they're living with and not to do anything about it. So in that context, I think it's very important that when you're working in a small business, that those people who are responsible for the human resources elements, for the welfare of their employees, realize that these are things that need to be addressed, and you need to start having conversations about them. Many people who work with us, who've worked with us in the past, are people who haven't been brought up in the culture that's developing today in terms of wellness, mental health and well-being, so that very much for older members of staff, these issues are taboo. and they're not the kind of things that people are going to ask for help about. So I think when you realize that, and when you start to introduce conversation or the notion of well-being at work, if you start bringing in programs, even as simple as appraisals that are dealing with these kinds of issues, so that people are given an opportunity to actually sit down and discuss these things with you, as opposed to, for example, in the past you might have had an open door policy. An open door policy is good, but it's only as good as the people that walk through your door. So you need to create these situations and create these environments where people have the opportunity to say, actually, this is what's going on with me. And you find that when you create those opportunities, people more often than not do take them. Whereas if you don't raise those questions, then they get on with it. I mean, it's people who work in similar companies to me and will know how often someone might be a week or two weeks away from their yearly appraisal or their half-yearly appraisal, and they just come into your office and burst in a flood of tears saying, I know I was going to have my appraisal, in 2 weeks, but I just can't wait anymore. I need to tell you this. So people will often be dealing with things and struggling with things, and they want the opportunity to talk about it, but sometimes they need to be given more opportunities. So, for example, one of the things that I've found has been very, very helpful where I work is increasing the opportunities and chances for people to have a conversation with you, even if it might be just taking someone to the side and on the offhand saying, how's everything with you, are you okay? Very often you'll find that you'll get a response which indicates that something's going on that you didn't know about. But if you're aware of that, and if you have a culture of speaking to people, of giving the opportunity to let you know what's going on, I think that in itself, in these types of small businesses, is something that people really are crying out for, and you don't know it unless you ask them about it.
Me again. I think what I'm most proud of actually in our current business is the culture that we've developed. So we're a 2-year-old business and we've got a cracking team, and culturally I'm very proud of the way that people feel that they're able to be open with their line managers, open with their exec team directly. People literally walk into the exec team offices at our place, which is great. And I'm also very proud of the culture that we've instilled as an HR team. But I take your point, not every business has that. I'm very excited that you said what we're most proud of, something that we've actually done. We're about to do something. Olympia, close your ears, you don't know about this, right, I love. But Andrew, my HR business partner, and I were talking today about an initiative we're going to hopefully roll out soon, which is all about encouraging people to do self-care plans. We've got to, the culture that has come along, I'm a massive fan of getting people to talk about it, but talking about it isn't enough. What are those people, what are we as individuals going to do about how we feel? It's great if people want to be able to talk about stuff with people at work. What if they don't? What if they don't want anybody to know anything? They still have an ability and I think, a real, they need to take quite a lot of stuff on themselves in terms of what do I need? We can help as a business if we know what people need. If people don't know what they need, they can't share it with you. So we're about to launch, encouraging people to develop self-care plans for themselves. What do they need from a financial well-being perspective? What do they need from a psychological perspective? What do they need from a health perspective? Start writing your own lists. Look at it. If you don't know, then take the opportunity to talk to people. And when you do know, share it. Doesn't have to be with your colleagues. Doesn't have to be with your friends or your family. It could be your partner. It could be, I don't know, somebody you found on Facebook, whatever. But the point is that owning what you need will allow you to then make steps forward in that. And there will always be people in your workplace that will want to support you in doing that, whatever kind of organization you work in, however big or however small. But I'm a firm believer in people taking that first step and taking that level of responsibility of owning for themselves what it is that they need, even if they don't know how to get there. So I'm really proud of something we're about to do.
Well, that's all fantastic to hear, all the things you guys are doing. And what I'm really hearing here is culture and that it's individual. It really comes down to the people we're working with and perhaps also to the organization that we're working for and how that fits together and aligns with one another. And perhaps this leads me into my next question, and which is, where does the corporate responsibility to support well-being at work, where does it start and where does it end?
I've got the mic, so I'll continue. I think it starts with everybody as individuals. I think as an organisation, you need to ask your team what they want corporate social responsibility to mean, from a wellness perspective, from an external perspective. So I think it starts with all of us. Where it ends, I don't think it does. I think it's a constantly evolving thing. I think it's something that businesses need to review on, and you review whatever your review cycle is. I think it should be evolving. It's not we've got a policy, tick. It's you've got to keep going with that. And again, talk to your people. Talk to your corporate social responsibility is about what the business wants to do. But who is the business? It's the people in it. It's the board should be supporting what the employees want. If the board aren't sure, then ask them.
Well, perhaps Marcus, you could perhaps elaborate on that from a board level perspective.
I think responsibility rests at the top because culture comes from the top. If you have a senior partner, CEO, managing director or chairman who is not engaged in well-being or corporate well-being, it will fail because people will take direction from that individual, not, as you say, from a policy. There is a danger that it's farmed out to HR. No, it's an HR function. And if ever there is a badly named term, it's human resources. For God's sake, humans are not resources. We're not pencils. If we could find another word for that, we might overcome some of the problems. But it cannot be farmed out. It has to be, as has been said previously, a culture that works throughout the organisation. And the other thing where both at board level and at executive level itself, is it cannot be something that people don't have time for. During, whether it's at the Commission or ISLAs or indeed other organisations I'm part of, there has been a danger that, as I said, good ideas, and they are good ideas, run out of steam because something else has come along, that something else has taken a priority, and by the time you come back to it, it is stale, it is gone. So it is important for everyone to keep that momentum going. And you talk about teams, and it's very vital to remember that all organisations are comprised of teams, not simply individuals. But within that team, there is an individual, and not everything works for everyone. As part of corporate social responsibility, it is important we go out and we engage with the community. We are predominantly private sector. I understand some are quasi-private sector, public interest entities. But you look at the work the Commission has done in terms of raising awareness, raising money, etc., etc. They have been a role model as regards this. But sometimes people don't want to put on a t-shirt and run around for 12 hours. It's not their sort of thing. We've got to find what suits different types of people. You know, it's not Life of Brian. We're not sort of all individuals type stuff. So we've got to find ways of engaging everyone in their own way. And one thing I was proud of at the Commission, which is linked to this, is we went through a management development program where we actually learned that we don't all think the same way. We don't all act the same way. We don't all come to decisions the same way. We don't all have the same priorities. Perhaps we could do with a little bit of understanding in our wellfulness approach that what works for one person doesn't work for another, and try and engage everyone, and particularly the ones that really are quite private individuals but still have needs, and maybe they can be dealt with in a way that is specific for them, which is why, as with others here, we do engage an outside firm, of which you may be familiar, to assist in it because it's got privacy and allows an individual approach. So starts at the top, executive, board, goes through the teams, down to the individual. HR, whatever we're going to call it, has a role, but it is not the people who run it. But perhaps their role is making sure that no one is excluded, no one is left behind. But we deal with it on an individual basis to a collective solution.
For us, it's about purpose. And I know it sounds a bit cliche, but for us, we actually do believe in it. And we do have our slogan, Better Working World, or Building a Better Working World. And to be honest, we do buy into that. And it's not just, and it cascades all the way through the organization. And the corporate responsibility, yes, it's internal, but external as well. And to be honest, I think it's something that the people nowadays feel quite strongly about. They want to work for you, but they want to feel they're making a difference as well. And that's something that we believe in as well. So not only do we buy into what we're doing with our staff internally, and to be honest, if you spend so much time recruiting the right people, you need to be able to provide them an environment where they feel they can bring the best of themselves to work, whether it's in the job that they're doing or what we call the ripple effect. And making a difference. So not only are they making a difference and providing a quality service, but they feel that they're making a difference in the community or further afield. And it is all part of corporate responsibility wellness, is providing this culture, this environment where people feel comfortable bringing the whole of themselves to work.
I really hear around what you were saying there around that it's important to engage people and help them have that purpose and really so that they can feel they're contributing and they are an important part of the organization. And so I have a burning question actually, and whoever wants to answer it, but there can be this notion that well-being is all softly mollycoddling people, and this is all very sweet and fluffy. But how do we ensure that supporting people's well-being doesn't create a victim culture? And how do we manage that?
Well, I think we employ humans. And we employ people. And much as you want to, we don't employ robots. So it would be very easy to expect perfection when you have a robot doing the job, but we don't. We have humans, and therefore they're going to have good days. They're going to have bad days. So providing a support structure or a culture where people feel they're listened to and supported is important. If you have underperforming individuals, well, that will be captured through another way. So there isn't, you can't use it as an excuse not to provide support to the rest of them. So from our perspective, we try and do both. So our culture of feedback, appraisals, etc. provides for the underperforming. At the same time, we hopefully provide an environment where everybody else feels comfortable working.
So very much providing support which is equally met with challenges and opportunities. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, on the sorry. On the same question, we're very big on accountability. So everybody's got to play their role. So like Marcus was saying, it's the people at the top's responsibility to set the culture. And so you provide people with the framework, with the support, with the tools, with the training, with the resources, with the understanding. But after that, the bottom line is, it's on you. This is your career. This is something most of us spend most of our day at work. So you need to make sure that you're getting the best out of it, and that's down on you. If you can be confident as an employer that you're doing everything that you can to help people develop and to make it the best possible place to work that it can be, after that you've got to start having those frank conversations, which is part of our well-being as well. We won't shy away from having to have difficult conversations, and we've had conversations where we've had to say, you need to go home and have a think and talk to your family and ask, is this really the right place for you? Because you're not doing that individual or the organisation any favours by having people in the wrong job. Because I really believe that in 99% of underperformance, it comes down to the person just not finding their optimum job yet. And if you're going to spend your day at work, you need to be happy. And so we support people in coming to that conclusion on their own, but they've got to remain accountable for their career and their decisions.
So what I'm hearing there is, and I use this distinction a lot in my work, is the distinction between serving someone and pleasing someone. And serving someone is actually still very supportive, but it's not just, oh, it's all okay. Thank you.
Just in terms of sort of corporate responsibility, I think one of the important things to think about is resources, and I think to a certain extent those businesses, those corporations who have who are well resourced and are able to affect a lot of change. Not only within their businesses, but sort of externally, going out into the public and making a difference, raising awareness, doing work for different charities. That's fantastic, and I think we should perhaps be, responsible in terms of looking towards developing people's understanding of wellness at that level. Because particularly in Gibraltar, where we've got, we're quite a close-knit community and a small country, I think we do have the opportunity to affect change on a large scale, within our own community. And so, with any luck, business in Gibraltar can actually affect change at that level. But I think to a certain extent, people in Gibraltar in particular need to be looking further afield than just affecting change inside businesses and neighbouring people. I think there's a lot to do with education that needs to be looked at. I know, for example, that some children now at schools are having mindfulness sessions, so that if we look towards educating children, towards knowing what mindfulness is at an early age, so that then bleeds into businesses, into corporations, so that as well as having that top-down approach where responsible CEOs, responsible boards are looking at their organizations and saying, look, this is a real thing, this is something we need to be talking about, this is something we need to be pushing, developing. At the same time, there should be a responsibility on the government, on our ministers, to maybe also be looking at this, but as well as a top-down kind of thing, having a bottom-up thing, so that if we can affect these changes in education, pretty soon we're going to meet in the middle, where most people, if not everyone, knows how important well-being is to not only have successful businesses, but also have a successful and happy community. So in that respect, I think that the notion of corporate responsibility perhaps goes, or should be going wider, and can quite easily go wide in Gibraltar. And that's certainly something that I'm confident is going to start happening in the next few years.
So really around educating people. What I really like around that is, because what I'm hearing you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's about helping people to be able to thrive and cope with the challenges that we're faced with. Because I think if we're looking sort of 10, 15 years back, the idea was to just offset our stress. So we go to work, and if we're stressed, then we need to offset it with enough downtime, and we're connected non-stop now. And this offsetting doesn't necessarily work. Well, I don't think it works, because otherwise we wouldn't be here today. But to really, help people to understand how their mind works, understand the importance of mindset, understand how we all think differently, experience things differently, have a different perspective, and then this meets with, as you say, what the companies do and the education piece around it. And I'm going to throw in my wild card question here, which is very much an opinion I'm asking from you guys, and that is, of late in the press we hear a lot around technology, AI, the developments that we're going to be up against, and possibly job losses, change in jobs, etc. And my question is, what is required so that we have a workforce that is up for those challenges and able to thrive despite all that is going to come to us? If anyone has any ideas, then please share it.
I think that the focus has got to be remembering who makes up the workforce, and that at the end of the day, no matter how much is brought in terms of technology, AI that might streamline businesses, we can't have the situation where, for example, you're working in an Amazon warehouse, which is largely automated, you're working by yourself, you don't have contact with people. We can't have that rolled out on a large scale. Because at the end of the day, we're always going to be human. We're always going to have our feelings. We're going to react to being isolated in similar ways. So, again, it becomes the responsibility of businesses that might otherwise take advantage of these types of technologies to increase profits, to decrease the troubles that come along with employing humans. These are the kinds of things that you can imagine people being driven towards in order to increase profits, and decisions being made at board level. It all does need to be kept under review, and I certainly can imagine legislation in these fields in the future, because what we can't do is allow profits to drive down people's quality of life, so that there will come a time when there will be a convergence between people's quality of life, people's well-being at work, and profit, and that will come sharply into focus. And at that point, I think some difficult decisions are going to have to be made, especially when you're thinking about global commerce, about the size of the globalization, the sizes of businesses that are going to exist in the future, so that there's going to become this very acute need to manage the workforce in a way that we've never seen before.
Anyone else? Any views on this?
Go on. No, you go. I was just going to say, wouldn't it be nice if we got to the place culturally, worldwide, where people on 0 hours contracts couldn't fall over at their workstations and nobody notices for 20 minutes. I mean, it's frightening. And I'm not quite sure how long, I agree with you entirely, I'm not quite sure how long that can continue to be acceptable. It's not acceptable. Why somebody should be put in a position where they feel like that's their only option, is to work for a business that does that to their staff. I think it's shocking, absolutely shocking. We're not talking about sweatshops in Bangladesh, and we shouldn't be, that's not acceptable either. We're talking about, people in more developed countries. It's an awful situation. So culturally, I think we all need to put a stand up against these things in the first place. I also think that phrases like work-life balance need to be got rid of. That kind of almost insinuates that it's 50-50. It's not, is it? It's never going to be. And I think that how your work and your life interact with each other, going back to your point, Marcus, it's all about the individual. It's all about what each of us need to make it life work. And we as individuals need to take responsibility for working out what that is, because nobody's going to tell us. So I think what we need to equip the generations coming up with is, call it resilience, call it the ability to be able to reach out and ask for help when they need it, and to be able to work out what it is that they need. And hopefully it's not the need to take a 0 hours job in a company like that.
Sorry, in your response to your question about technology, obviously technology is something that affects our industry significantly. We're seeing a lot of automation in jobs that previously were done by individuals. So our organization, what we're trying to do is create a workforce that's adaptable. We're also offering the opportunity to retrain in some of these areas as well. So there's the white badges, what we call, which is allowed internal training for that you can just take advantage of, which allows people to retrain in other areas which they're not expert on, which will allow them to adapt with the future. So it is part of the corporate responsibility, is being aware of how the future can affect your workforce and being prepared to allow them the opportunities and the career development even within the constraints of the new technology is bringing.
I agree. Unfortunately, jobs will be lost with new technology. They have done since pre-industrial ages. Insurance area will be particularly one of those that adaptations of artificial intelligence will make huge changes in reduction number of underwriters and people like that. These are stresses, like many other work stresses, that you will not change. You were completely correct when you said earlier that there was an attempt to try and alleviate stress by giving alternatives to it. Unfortunately, work comes with stress and stress comes with work. A lot of what we're trying to do now, and I think everyone around this bench and many of you, are how people deal with that stress. You're not going to remove it, but it's their perception of that stress and how they manage it. And that's going to be true when some people, their roles will be taken over by new technology. What we've seen in the past is that that new technology has brought vast number of new roles. So it is something that we have to make sure people are aware that there's probably not going to be a job for life. None of us have had jobs for lives. But it is a challenge, but it is the job of our employers to make sure that we are prepared for that challenge, we are trained for that challenge, where necessary we're reschooled and reskilled for that challenge, and we are not afraid of it and the opportunities it could bring. On 0 hours, you're completely correct, utterly abused in certain places. But there are many people, including one of my kids, who adore having 0 hour contracts. It suits their lifestyle absolutely perfectly. But what we've got to do, as indeed legislation has done in the past, is remove abuse, right? You cannot change the fact people lose their jobs, but you can make sure that it is done in the correct way and the people are treated, again, humanely. It's where the word comes from. So let us deal with stress. We cannot prevent it.
So what I've heard very much was around training people, upskilling, adaptability, increasing resilience so that people can deal with the changes that are to come, and companies are playing a key role in that. So I know we're running out of time. I've got one last quick question, and that is, what are the benefits, the direct outcomes? You may even have data, which would be amazing. But what have you seen directly as a benefit of increasing well-being at work? Maybe just one, example.
Picking up on Marcus's point, we from the top have a culture of continuous improvement, which was kind of answering the question about what are we going to do when AI and technology and everything else that's going to be keeps getting promised is going to happens and gets delivered. And what the continuous improvement does is it changes your mindset to not be afraid of change but embrace it. Builds people with resilience and coping skills. So none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to be happening tomorrow or next year, but just give people those daily coping skills they need to not be afraid of change, whilst, yeah, of course, giving them the training and the learning development as well. And that means you're going to find it easier to adapt when you have to. And we've undergone loads of change, and not everyone is up for that. But for the people that are, I think it just makes for a better workforce and a happier place to be, because I, for one, feel like I've had 10 different jobs in 10 years and I've never left the building. So it would be that, the continuous improvement, just don't be afraid of change. We're there to support each other through it.
So it sounds like that adaptability and that mindset around positivity around change can really help people to thrive and be excited about, you know, new ways of doing things, new things to learn and to develop and grow.
Present things as an opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone else? Any outcomes?
Yeah, no, there's a phrase actually that just sprung to mind when you were saying about that. There's some phrase, I can't remember who quoted it, sorry, but there's something around people not being afraid of revolution, not evolution. So as somebody who's worked in a lot of startups and a lot of new businesses and fast-growing businesses, there's constant change. And it doesn't mean that you're going left to right, but as long as you're presenting things to people as an evolution, they're not going to be scared of it. They want to go along for the ride. So as a business, you've got a responsibility in terms of how you communicate these changes as well. People have a responsibility to grow their own resilience. We have a responsibility not to scare them. So, and to equip them accordingly. You're absolutely correct.
For me, it's just been working with people who perhaps at the outset might have been apprehensive about the fact that, looking at situations that might otherwise have been stressful had no solution to them. And just working with them and finding people's mindsets changing so that whereas in the past they'd be looking down a dead end, not see any way out, for them then to come to you and say, look, I've been thinking about this, and it's, everything's changed, to affect that change in the workplace so that someone who was struggling is now finding a way through that or seeing over that. For me, that's been wonderful.
Amazing.
When it comes to actual results of performance, it's very difficult to put a number to it. I don't think any of us can. I think the one thing that you can measure is retention, and so if recruitment is really, really hard. I mean, you're saying recruitment is hard for a small company, it's hard for a big company as well. And we only have, 45 employees. We don't have a HR department. We do it ourselves. And increasing retention is really important, because if you have the right people and you provide them the environment where they can flourish, and where they feel that they're making a difference, that the career is developing, then you're providing the right environment for them to grow, and wellness has to be part of that. So we firmly believe in, and this is a strategy, part of our strategy as a firm, is if you have people at the center of your strategy, then everything else will follow. So profit, retention, everything else will follow. So we firmly believe in that ourselves.
So the outcomes are varied. It's retention. It's an outcome for the people themselves, for the company, and as we said earlier, for the community as a whole. Yeah.
This is final words. It's ultimately like any relationship, whether it's employer-employee, husband, wife, whatever, and speaking as a wife and a mother, I can say this sort of thing. It comes down to trust. That most simple and basic of things. Why are people frightened of change at work? Because they don't necessarily trust their employer. Why are you upskilling me? Is it because you're getting rid of my old job and I might have to go through a competition to get the one vacancy that is there? Trust is not about always promising people and delivering on that. It is not pleasing people. It is being open and as honest as you can, and sometimes companies cannot be completely honest with their staff because there's a takeover, because other things are going on. but for the employee, the team member, to have trust in their team leader, in their senior executives and their board, that they will do their level best to ensure that that individual is protected within the remit of that organisation. If they have that trust, they will not be scared of change, they will not be scared of evolution, because they have reliance. And on the other side, when you spoke about the victim culture, the employer should be able to trust their employee that they will not abuse that trust that has been placed in them by taking endless sick leaves, of becoming a snowflake and needing a safe space and all this sort of thing. But they will treat the respect and the empowerment they've been given seriously. So if I was to say one thing that will give willfulness in the workplace its best chance is mutual trust.
Agree completely.
Thank you very much. So we've come to the end, and I think, I could sit here for a while longer and ask you guys questions. I hope you all found it insightful and useful to hear how different companies of different profiles approach well-being at work. I was going to try and recap some of it, but I'm not sure I'm able to do. Recap all the wonderful things that have been said, but there is one thing that has really stood out for me, and that was, because there is huge initiatives that you can implement as a company, there are small things you can do, but the one thing that really stood out for me is perhaps it's not so much about what we do, but how we do what we do, and how we are as humans with one another. How do we engage? How do we treat each other? How do we do business? So anyway, that's my takeaway. If you do have any questions, any further questions for the panel, grab them, or you can speak to me over a few glasses of bubbles and a canapé. Additionally, I want to point out I have created a LinkedIn group, Working Minds Gibraltar, which has interviews on it of international business leaders on this topic, on well-being at work. So you can use it as a resource, as an inspiration. You can ask questions, and so please look it up. It's Working Minds Gibraltar on LinkedIn, and ask to join the group, and it's open to absolutely everyone, so it'd be great to have many of you on there, and I'm pretty sure that there's people in the audience that have a lot to add and to offer on this subject too. And I do want to thank my wonderful panel. I think they've been absolutely fantastic, and it's been really amazing for you to take the time to speak here this evening and to openly share all your knowledge and experience. So can we have a round of applause for these guys?